Hello, my little rats, and welcome to my video discussing Into the Pit. This is the fourth recording because I failed two of them, got the third one real good, I was happy with it, about to edit, and then realised that I got a piece of evidence wrong that kind of completely changed my interpretation of some of the things in the game, and now here we are. So, to start the discussion, and I'll tell you when that is, by the way. To start the discussion, we should talk about whether this game is in the game continuity. I'm just going to say it is for now. I have not seen a compelling enough reason why it isn't, and it feels like there's a lot of stuff in the game that feels important enough. Like it's a FNAF game, so of course it's in the game continuity. Like the only real reason I've seen it not be is either because it has book Easter eggs, which I don't necessarily feel confirms anything, like one way or the other, whether it is or isn't canon, or that it's based on a book, which again, I feel like if they're taking the time to adapt it into a game, then it probably is. If anything, I feel like that would make the book canon, if it was an exact recreation, which it isn't, so. Like, it's clearly been changed to not only fit the game lore, which we'll get into, but also to be a better game, so. I feel good saying that, like, we can trust that it's in continuity. Return to the Pit, the interactive novel, is coming out later, and if that's different than this, then we're obviously going to need to have a discussion about which one's canon, because it seems like the week before, just being, like, literally said to be set before the first FNAF game, feels like it's in universe, and if one is, they all probably are, but we'll see kind of how that changes as time moves forward. For now, I'm going to say I think this game is in continuity. Okay, but we should probably talk about the book Easter eggs. Now, some of them are easy, you can write them off. The Pizza Kit Factory Easter egg is just like, yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. Like, Freddy's is renting out animatronics, right, in AR. Is it really so much of a stretch that they're sending out pizza kits for people to make? Like, no, obviously not, so that's fine. Cam 1280, yeah, that's fine, that's just a camera. Sergio's lucky Balloon Boy, I mean, like, it's. We know at this point the Balloon Boy probably existed a lot further back in the franchise's history than 1987, so the idea of there being a small Balloon Boy on the camera, sure. The main arenas, once again, we've kind of known that they've existed a lot earlier, along with, like, the Babies gang, because there was a Springlock suit in that location where these Funtime animatronics were, so it clearly was set a lot earlier, and therefore, again, the mini arena Easter egg, that's fine. But there are some bigger ones. Mainly two Tales from the Pizzaplex Easter eggs. One is GGY. So either Gregory is a robot, or some form of immortal, or the more realistic interpretation, it's just an Easter egg, and you can explain it easily. There are two kids called Gregory, who each are very good at arcade games, fine, whatever. Hell, you could even say it's Gregory Sr. and Gregory Jr., and the reason why GGY in the security breach era is so good is because his father taught him the secrets, or whatever. Like, again, it doesn't mean anything, I feel. You can easily write it off as an Easter egg. Then there's the Children at Play sign with the goop under it. But the goop is brown in the books, and the Children at Play signs are neon green, and here it's gold, and the goop is black. Which usually I wouldn't call, like, such a difference out, because it feels kind of like there's no point. But the fact that the goop is black specifically is important because we see the black goop of agony coming out of Pit Trap. So we know that black goop means agony. We also see the Stitch Wraith, who we'll talk about literally in just a second. And the Stitch Wraith has the agonizing touch, which once again causes the agony goop to bleed out of the eyes, right, when it kills someone, because of the agony touch. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of explanations that you could possibly have here. Like, the Stitch Wraith was something to do with this. Whoever set up the Children at Play sign initiative, because it certainly wasn't the government of this town. It certainly, Like, they're underfunded. We know that. That's a key plot point, so it could have been a private individual, potentially. Maybe someone who suffered a loss and whose agony was infused into the statues. Or, hell, you could just say that school is a place of such agony that it all coalesces around the statue. Or it's just an Easter egg, like, I don't feel that necessarily brings Tales from the Pizzaplex into the books. Could it? Or into the games? Could it? Sure, but I'm hesitant to say that based off of an Easter egg, like just one Easter egg. But I mean, because here's the thing, right? If this children at play sign Easter egg isn't good enough to be written off, then I feel like GGY kind of needs to be brought to the same level. And if you're taking GGY to the same level, then Gregory's a robot, right? I don't really care if the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are canon. If anything, I would want them to be canon, because that proves me right? It proves that Glitchtrap isn't Mimic, because their backstories of the Mimic 1 program with the Baobab tree and all that do not line up with Glitchtrap's backstory, meaning Glitchtrap cannot be the Mimic 1 program, and probably the Mimic can't be Burntrap either. So I'm perfectly fine with the books being in continuity. It would support all of the theories that I have. I just don't think they are. And it's going to require something fairly substantial to convince me that they are, because it goes against every other book. The reason why I think the interactive novels can be in universe is because they're kind of games. Like, very, very simple games, but games, unlike a collection of short stories. That's just my opinion on it. Obviously, there is the other option that Into the Pit is a game in universe, but I don't think so. And I think actually the reason why not is that it would be insane. Because think of it like this, right? If Into the Pit is a game in universe, then there's a reference to the movie. There's a reference to the Twisted Ones in Oswald's room. There are references to Tales from the Pizzaplex. There are references to Fazbear Frights. And so that would suddenly mean that, like, the book, and, like, the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, especially the GGY, also is an Easter egg to Security Breach, meaning Security Breach would then be a game in universe, and then, kind of by extension, Ruin and Help 1 and 2, effectively they'd all be games in universe at that point. And books in universe and films in universe, we wouldn't have anything that's just in universe that isn't another piece of media. And at that point, why even have them be games or films or books in universe when everything is, and kind of therefore nothing is, if you get what I'm saying? Like, it would feel like if this game is a game in universe, then kind of everything is media in universe, and at that point we're just playing the role of someone in universe trying to solve these games, meaning that effectively none of them are in universe, which kind of takes away the blank check that Steelwall gave themselves to, write away any, like, design inconsistencies or slight lore inconsistencies. Like, they gave themselves a blank check to get rid of a lot of that from the older games, and making everything a game in universe would undo that. So I do not feel like it's a game in universe. But obviously there are Tales from Pizzaplex Easter eggs, and so I feel like here's the thing, I don't think that all the Easter eggs mean nothing, especially the minigames and Stitch Wraith. Fetch is really weird, because it really isn't a recreation of the story at all, it just has Fetch and CU in it. To my knowledge, the main character doesn't even look like the main character in the books, and in the book the main character does not die. So that minigame is quite odd. I don't know who the protagonist of that minigame is. But it does seem to confirm that the Golden Freddy suit that we are meeting in Jeff's Pizza is probably possessed, because we see the whole eye thing that goes on with Golden Freddy that seems to indicate possession. Maybe it's the silver eyes that, that have always indicated possession. So for the most part, I feel like it's just telling us that, hey, Fetch is there is a version of Fetch in universe, and foreshadowing for the next game. And that's kind of what I'm going to write that off as, mostly. And then obviously there's the 8 balloons, which we'll get to. Then there's Count the Ways. And this proves my point, I think, actually, that, hey, these minigames aren't bringing in, like, the books that these Easter eggs come from are not suddenly in continuity. Instead, what's being telegraphed to us is, hey, the minigames tell us that these characters and maybe similar events existed, as the books always have, but not that they were canon, like, not that their physical stories happened. And the evidence, like, similar but different. That's what you've got to keep in mind when thinking about these minigames. They are similar to the books, but they have key differences. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the things we see in the books exactly happen one-to-one with the games like that. Instead, it's more like, hey, maybe a version of these characters exist in both universes. And I think Count the Ways basically proves that, because in the story, Bon Bon was nowhere to be seen. I remember it being a key talking point, actually, around, like, like Dorko, for example, his video reading the book when he's going over all the notes and all the breakdowns and all that. I remember it being a key thing that, like, in the comments, people were like, oh, maybe the reason Funtime Freddy is so aggressive is because he doesn't have Bon Bon. Maybe Bon Bon was created to calm him down because even Afton was shocked by how aggressive he was, or something like that. Right? Like, that was an idea floating around. Point is, it was a pretty key thing that Bon Bon was not in that story. And yet, in the Count the Ways minigame, what do we see but Bon Bon on Funtime Freddy's arm? So I think what that tells us is, hey, Millie, the character from the book, she exists. Like, Millie is canon to the games. Did she go into her grandfather's shed and hop inside of an animatronic? No. Instead, Funtime Freddy was rented out, she was lured into him, and then he caught her like Baby did to Elizabeth. And she was tortured and killed inside of him, probably by Afton. To me, that makes more sense with what we're seeing, right? And that's why Bon Bon is there. Compared to the book. So, Millie, as a character, exists. And yes, she was tortured and killed by Funtime Freddy, but the exact version of Funtime Freddy that we see in the books, the exact way the events play out, is not what we're seeing in the games. So, similar to the book, but different. And with that context in mind, I think we can now turn to Eleanor and Stitch Wraith. Eleanor basically recreates To Be Beautiful. That doesn't really matter. I mean, it kind of reinforces the idea of, hey, maybe robot kids. Maybe. I won't go too much into that. I think a lot of it's symbolic. I'm not going to go into the fact that she puts the remnant. I mean, we get our first look at, like, Remnant canonically, like the Remnant necklace. The Remnant is, yeah, canonically light blue. I don't actually think that's been established in the games anywhere. Like, probably it has in the books, but in the games I don't think it was actually established. So it's interesting that now we have a canon, like, hey, here's Remnant in the games, which is nice. But I'm not going to go into the fact that she puts it on her and then she falls into dust when in the garbage, whereas in the book, it's like, I don't, like, she takes it off and then she turns into garbage. Like, I'm not going to go into that because I think it's more symbolic. But I do think that, like, hey, Eleanor and Stitch Wraith being here does not mean that the Stitch Wraith stingers, as we saw them in the books, were canon. Like, they didn't happen, they aren't, or they're canon, but they aren't in continuity, right? They have not physically happened in the game's timeline. Afton didn't get taken to a hospital after FNAF 6, explode in a warehouse, and become a giant trash bunny. Like, that did not happen. But what did happen is, hey, Eleanor and Stitch Wraith exist. To some extent. Who exactly possesses Stitch Wraith? What exactly Eleanor is? All up to interpretation. Like, that's left very vague. But it does tell us that, hey, Stitch Wraith, and so possibly Drake and Andrew, but definitely Stitch Wraith, like a version of Stitch Wraith, whoever he's possessed by, exists in the games. Eleanor was an agony creature in the books, and I'm inclined to think that's still true here. Obviously, she looks a lot like Baby. She has Elizabeth's signature green eyes. Like, Baby's eyes canonically change colour from blue to green. So, I'm inclined to think that maybe Eleanor, because it's never said whose agony Eleanor is created out of. And as we'll talk about with Pit Bonnie, I do think that some amount of, like, your consciousness or soul or whatever resides in any agony creature made by you. Or maybe Eleanor has a bit of remnant. Like, I mean, here's the thing: for her to have a remnant necklace, she must have some remnant. I feel like Eleanor has a very decent chance of being like Elizabeth's Pit Bonnie. Like, whatever Pit Bonnie is to Afton, which we'll talk about, she, like, Eleanor probably is to Elizabeth, I would say. Or at the very least, she's created out of Elizabeth Afton's agony. Not just agony from her death, which was probably fairly painful, but also agony from then being tortured in the body of Circus Baby. After all, human emotions, there's no reason to think they wouldn't be able to continue to generate after you die. And with that said, we can now. Oh, well, I guess we should also point out that the Stitch Wraith and Pit Bonnie actually both have remnant blue eyes. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't know what to make of it, but they do have remnant blue eyes. I'll get into an identity I think the Stitch Wraith could maybe be, but even then I'm really not confident about it. Okay, on to Pit Bonnie. I kind of foreshadowed it earlier when I was talking about Eleanor, but and when I was talking about the agony goop, but I clearly do agree that Pit Bonnie is an agony creature of some kind. But I don't think he's just agony. For a few reasons. For one, the Shadow animatronics are probably... The Shadow and Phantom animatronics are probably agony. It depends on what you think Dark Remnant is. I personally think Dark Remnant is possessed agony because Shadow Bonnie has white eyes, and traditionally white eyes in this franchise seem to refer to possession. Again, see the silver eyes. And so and plus I just kind of feel like for it to be a variant, like Dark Remnant, implies that it has to be dark, obviously being agony in this case. It has to be agony with one component of Remnant. It can't be agony plus metal because that would imply that there was some other Golden Freddy suit or some other puppet or some other cupcake or some other Legion of Balloon Boys or some other Toy Bonnie, none of which really would make sense. So I feel like it makes more sense to be possessed agony in the same way Remnant is possessed metal. Which would kind of explain the like semi-ghostly kind of whatever the phantom shadows are, and then I think the phantoms just are creations of agony. They clearly aren't regular hallucinations because they mess with your technology every time you get one. Some of them mess with systems that aren't ventilation, and you can hallucinate Springtrap, and he works like an actual hallucination would. So I'm inclined to think that that's a real hallucination, which is wild. But or I mean, I guess William could be doing something as he's a soul, but that could be an actual hallucination. If you just leave the ventilation to fail for long enough, like you'll start to hallucinate Springtrap. Meanwhile, I think the phantoms are like actual creations. And to me, the fact that they're so ghostly, the fact they can do things like teleport, mess with technology, again, all very ghostly stuff, I think makes sense for them to be agony creations, because why else would they be serving Afton? Why else would... Plus, just Afton has enough agony to do that. So I don't think Pit Bonnie is just agony, but he could be maybe metal plus agony. We haven't seen that. However, he's clearly not just an agony beat. However, that would also imply that there's a... I mean, here's the thing. Another Spring Bonnie suit existing seems to just be in the cards. So I'm inclined to believe that that's just the truth. I mean, we see two Spring Bonnie suits in FNAF. In FNAF Fredbear's, right? We see two Spring Bonnie suits, so more than possible that there were just multiple of them. So yeah, this could be Agony possessing a suit, which to me feels reasonable. But I think there is some remnant here. For one, obviously you've got the remnant blue eyes that I mentioned earlier, for a reason. But there's also numerous things to point towards the idea that this thing is... It has some personality, it's got some soul, it has some sentience. It's not a just agony beast that just attacks people. Which is kind of probably what the Blob is, right? Like, the Blob is probably metal possessed by agony. This thing, I think, I think this is like... You've got the soul, you've got the metal, you've got the agony. Like, it's all three coming together, like Omni Remnant or whatever. Well, we'll call it Omni Remnant, sure. This omni-remnant creation, a fusion of all three, would make sense. That would explain, because it clearly isn't just a human in a suit, right? It's got horrific teeth and stuff. It would have had to have gotten them from somewhere. That, again, kind of feels like that's probably something to do with agony. It also has the ability to shapeshift, which is also true of Eleanor. So again, just agony creations seem to have the ability to shapeshift and look like other people. Um, yeah, and then just the metal comes from just like, look at him, he's a suit, he makes metallic sounds, but he also like he struggles to breathe. He says like, "There's no point hiding. I always come back. I will make you suffer as I have suffered." Shout out to Clockwork Crystal for having just all of the voice lines right there. They've gone into the files of the game and just found like the audio files are just named what they say. Feel free to listen to that if you want to go over the voice lines of Pit Bonnie. But the point is that, like, between, him literally saying, "I will always come back," him saying, "You will suffer as I have suffered," which feels very, like, personal, right? Like, it's not just an agony beast. And again, implies that William has agony, which is weird for timeline reasons. And finally, his reaction to the photo of him and Henry. The freak out that guy has. Like, one of his eyes twitches, he fail, like, he really freaks out, like, he twitches all over the place, like, it's a visceral reaction. There are two options. Either one, he's seeing himself, and that causes a weird reaction, but I kind of doubt it, because, like, William doesn't seem to care, like, especially in FNAF 6, like, we meet him at probably his most ugly in Scrap Trap, and he still kind of seems to take pride, like, or at the very least, he doesn't seem to be too bothered by his situation, so it doesn't make sense to me that seeing his human self would cause him to freak out. But it could be seeing him in a friendly position with Henry, maybe. And so, yes, I definitely feel like some of Afton's soul, some of his consciousness, his remnant is here. When exactly it was created is thanks to the fact that there's a time-travelling ball pit. Thanks to the existence of a time-travelling ball pit, it is, as you might expect, very difficult to really determine when this thing was created. There was a theory prior to FNAF 6 that, or during about FNAF 6, that Afton may have changed suits, which is possible. As we've established, there are multiple Spring Bonnie suits. So maybe this is what was left of Springtrap, and the Agony kind of like warped it and fixed it, and then it went into the time traveling ball pit and went back to the past. I mean, it's possible. It could have been created in the past, which would actually further my theory that Elizabeth died first, because if he knew enough about Agony and Remnant to, even as he was alive, because he's still alive in 87, make his own Remnant to put his consciousness into this thing, then he probably has done quite a few experiments, meaning the sister location must be in effect, or at least the fun times must be, and therefore Elizabeth must be dead. So yeah, we'll definitely further that. But it's really hard to say. But I do think that this thing is omni-remnant. It's the soul, it's the metal, it's the agony, it's all of them combined. To me, that just makes the most sense. Now we're going to talk about the date. First off, we can prove that this game is actually after FNAF 6. That's very easy. In the mill, we see FNAF 6 rubbish. So it's just fairly easy to say that, yeah, FNAF 6 by this point has happened, and we can even pinpoint the date that it's happened. Now, obviously, we can pinpoint the past of Into the Pit, that's easy. And this is where I made a mistake. Because I thought that in the past the date was August 1985, just to say it's August in the future. And so I was actually going to use this as evidence that this was its own location with its own string of murders and that it was not the MCI. But I'm pretty sure it is the MCI because it is actually, I was wrong, it is June 1985 in the past, which is literally the exact month the MCI victims died. I kind of feel like that's basically confirmation at that point that the MCI is 1985, that this is the MCI. Which is weird, because we know for a fact that the MCI victims, that the last two were lured together, and then three more were linked back. So, what's happening here? Well, we'll discuss that in a bit, because I need to discuss the time travel first so that we understand that it's not an agony memory. But firstly, let's establish the future, because we actually can work it out. So on the calendar in the future, there are 16 days, and depending on whether it's a Monday to Sunday calendar or a Sunday to Saturday calendar, the day either falls on August 16th Thursday or August 16th Friday. Now, the reason why that's substantial is because August the 16th, Friday, is 2024, or is a date in 2024. Friday is August the 16th in 2024, which means that Into the Pit could very well be taking place at the exact same time the game came out, which I think would make a lot of sense, or it takes place in 2029. Obviously, there are other dates, but those are the closest to 2023, which is important because I think it's likely, like, Monday to Sunday is more common for calendars, and I just feel like it makes sense that, like, if it's August, like, and in 2024, then, like, I feel like that's intentional because that is literally the month and year it came out, like, it just feels very intentional to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that in all likelihood, this game takes place in August of 2024, or at least the future segments do. Obviously, when you go to the past, it's June 1985, but the future segments take place in August of 2024. What's fascinating about that is that we see the rubbish from FNAF 6. Now, it's basically confirmed that FNAF 3 is 2023, and this adds further evidence to that, because FNAF 6 had a file that was HRY223. It was the Insanity ending file, I believe. So obviously, Henry 2023. It was unclear if that was when Henry came up with the plan, or the year FNAF 6 was taking place. Well, if FNAF 6 has already happened by August of 2024 and Into the Pit, then FNAF 6 is likely 2023, and obviously FNAF 3 is then also likely 2023, and then AR, thanks to the fact that we know for a fact that the Springtrap in that game is the real Springtrap because it stinks and it's vintage and they didn't mean to put that model out, so clearly it's the real Springtrap, therefore puts AR also in 2023. So there you go. That actually seemingly does give us a concrete date for when FNAF 6 is. It also confirms that obviously the FNAF 6 location is nearby, which seems to imply that the Freddy's location we're going to, and that Jeff's Pizza eventually obviously is built in, is the original, the first Freddy's location. Which is really cool, because we've never gotten to see that location before, and now we finally do. Okay, now let's talk about the time travel, and then we can talk about the implications. Trust me, I would love for the time travel to just be agony memories, or an agony hallucination, and not to be real, because then a lot of the inconsistencies and difficult things really become easier. But I just don't think it is. For the evidence. Obviously, time travel rat comes into the future. You can use things from the future in the past, and the past in the future. That's not necessarily a big thing, but already. And there's things like, you put a paper pile down in the past, it's there in the future. You take the mallet in the past, and its head is gone in the future, and so on and so forth. Like, you've changed something in the past, and it happens in the future. But fine, maybe you could say it's an agony memory sub-dimension that's affecting our reality. Already kind of ridiculous compared to it just being time travel, which is really weird to say. But the thing that, in my opinion, proves beyond a reasonable doubt that it is definitely time travel is the doors in Jeff's Pizza, ironically enough. So obviously, during, I believe it's night 2? Should be night 2. Uh, Pit Trap, Pit Bonnie, Yellow Rabbit, whatever you want to call him, busts through the door, right? And the doors break, and every subsequent night in the past, they are broken. But in the future, the doors are not just broken, they are gone. Jeff never comments on this, which implies that, like, first off, it implies that as far as he's concerned, the doors have just always been gone. And also, again, it implies a timeline of events. Doors are broken, and at some point, doors are removed but not replaced, and as far as Jeff's concerned, it's just always been that way, when we know for a fact that we changed the past. Also, there's obviously the Leave ending, where Oswald leaves and just makes a life for himself in 85. That seems like it kind of confirms that this is not just like a memory, it is like actual time travel, you're actually in the past. Although I do feel like this is actual time travel, we're seeing an actual event, which then leads to the question of how. Because the MCI did not happen like this. We know it didn't happen like this. So how could it have happened like this? Well, there actually is a good there's two good solutions, actually. One, during the game you can get all kind of Easter eggs of kind of like ghostly children that you meet during the first day, right before everything goes to shit. And so maybe you could say that like the ball pit does weird like time things, and when Oswald went to the past, like all of the dead bodies were kind of like manifested into the party room. I don't think so, but it is an option. The other, and in my opinion, far more likely option is based on the fact that the party room, like, here's the thing, check out the party room in the game versus the party room during that first cutscene. You'll notice when looking at the two that there's a whole table that wasn't there, and, all kinds of decorations, and, no dead bodies, no blood, nothing like that. I mean, this is the big reveal at the end of the game. They couldn't have showed us some dead bodies. Well, maybe that's intentional. In fact, it probably is. I mean, in a game with pretty good like attention to detail, like things that happen in the past affect the future. Like it's really good attention to detail. Why does the party room look so different? Like, yeah, it's messed up, but not really that badly. Well, what if the ghosts are causing a hallucination? We know that ghosts can cause illusions. It's me, obviously. The phantoms, I guess. The illusion, spring traps, and FNAF 3. Like, we know ghosts can manipulate reality to an extent. What if the dead kids are literally manifesting their bodies, or at least an illusion of their bodies, to scare people, to try to tell people what happened? And that's why the place gets shut down. Because here's the thing, it has to reopen at some point, because we know that the original FNAF 1 location, which this seems to be, because even like Gabriella's uncle slash grandpa's, I'm pretty sure she says it's her uncle's, but then it says grandpa's, or the other way around. It's weird, but anyway, Gabriella's family members. Sketchbook has like, the cupcake, who we don't even see, who's said to have been reprogrammed to growl, which, in my opinion, is basically just confirmation that the cupcake is Susie's dog. Like, plain as day confirmation of that. Um, but you also get things like the mill having the guitar strings, but then also references to things like they say they're going to open up the animatronics and check inside them, but then the Tech 2 mysteriously disappeared, and which implies that like they're noticing weird things coming from the animatronics. They're talking about the Freddy trying to rip his own head off and things like that, which obviously is all about possession and stuff like that, but what's interesting is that like this lines up with the MCI. As I said, this seems to be the very original, the very first location. It has a secret safe room, whatever, like for the spring lock suits. So why then does it not line up? Well, I think this is the reason why. The ghosts are creating illusions and using them to kind of try and tell people what happened. And think about it, when you look at the newspapers that we get given in FNAF 1, like, they report two incidents of the MCI, and they report, like, obviously the blood and mucus spilling from the suits, and they report the place shutting down. But that does leave an opening after the MCI is resolved, where, like, if there were, well, like, we don't see a newspaper referring to a situation of mass hysteria, but feasibly that it could have happened, and obviously the place would reopen, because even if you brought in the police and told people that there were a bunch of dead bodies found in a room, like, no one would see them, you know? That makes Pit Trap even weirder, because, again, he clearly is William Afton, so time travel from the future? Created in the past? Is there something weird going on here? Hard to say, but very clearly I feel like this is the MCI, and I feel like that is the best explanation that I have is that they are manifesting their own dead bodies, and that's why the room doesn't line up. That's why there's a whole missing table. That's why there's no dead bodies in there, no blood. Like, it's all because it's an illusion. It was made to try and tell people what's happened here, that they are dead, that they are in need of help. Um, so I feel like that makes the most logical sense, which now and then leads us on to the fact that there are 6 kids there. You know, 5 are very obvious. You can see mainly legs. Like, you can see there are 2 legs leading to one place, 2 legs leading to another, 2 places leading to another on the right, and then on the left there's 1 leg that leads in and another leg that leads the other way in. But there is another shoe, and like if you brighten and kind of twist the image, you can see it better. Well, like, there is a 6th shoe here. So was there a 6th MCI victim? Honestly, I think yes. Like, and I think that even relates to Help Wanted 2 in an interesting way, because in Help Wanted 2, we all assumed that, oh, the puppet is Charlie, right? Like, it's representative of Charlie. What if it isn't? What if there's a sixth dead kid and was stuffed inside of the puppet, or possesses the puppet in some way? Or a version of the puppet? Again, multiple animatronics can exist. To me, like, I admit, I don't love it, but I actually think it kind of makes sense, and would then allow Charlie to be the first death, like the first murder of William, while still having a puppet die last. And this isn't the only time where we get evidence of a 6th dead kid, because we also get it in, FNAF 2, where each, like, dead body has a blood splatter pretty much right next to it, or at least in an adjacent room. And then what do we see but a table with blood splatter around it, but no body? There are 5 puddles to match 5 bodies, and then a 6th secret puddle. And this game really leans hard on 6 balloons. The 6th secret hat that the new purple guy sprite is, dangling over a pit. It kind of feels like this game is really leaning into secret 6th dead kid. I feel like that's pretty. I feel like that's what the game is going for. And so, okay, we have Susie, Fritz, Jeremy, Gabriel, the one you should not have killed, and X. Could it be Andrew? Honestly, I think there's a decent chance. I mean, a lot of people are seeing that Andrew could be the Into the Pit, or sorry, not the Fetch guy who we see, the weird ghost there. Very possible. Um, I think that, like, here's the thing: we see the Stitch Wraith, so Andrew being a secret 6th dead kid, that makes sense. But also, like, maybe the Stitch Wraith is some variant of the puppet. I know it's not great, but it could work as him being a variant of the puppet, and then maybe that's why we're seeing the Stitch Wraith. Um, Outside of Oswald's window sometimes. It is worth pointing out that the kids seem to be helping Pit Bonnie, so again, what exactly that's supposed to mean isn't exactly clear, but I mean, the film and books have established enough that William can kind of like control the dead kids, that I'm kind of willing to give that a pass. FNAF 2, obviously, where the 6 souls go, isn't really that difficult. I mean, there's probably 1 for each of the regular 5 you'd expect, and then Balloon Boy probably. I mean, would make a lot of sense, or again, maybe some version of the puppet. I mean, who's to say, really? But then there's Foxy Go Go Go, which clearly takes place in the FNAF 1 location, and again, doesn't match the MCI, so maybe a 3rd MCI? If it is, we only see 5 bodies, but there's a lot of explanations. Maybe William couldn't lure a 6th kid, maybe a 6th kid was lured separately, maybe William is the 6th death because he gets spring-locked, and there's a very fun there is a very fun conclusion to that, where, like, why do only 5, who I believe the 3rd MCI victim kids are the ones who get William springlocked, they find peace after that, and then the original MCI, like, kind of stick around, and they need Happiest Day, and that's what that is. Because the FNAF 2 ones are probably just put to rest when their animatronics are destroyed. interestingly, that would kind of actually create a very unique situation in which you would have. But obviously, there are only. Sorry, what am I saying? There are 5 ghosts who stand up to William. But the film did technically have Sparky the dog in it. So all I'm going to say is that he could have been retroactively made canon, in which case he's a sixth animatronic that's peaceful, and maybe that would explain why the ghost doesn't want to kill William, because they're a pacifist. Could provide a nice little alternative to the other secret animatronic, Golden Freddy, who is very much so not a pacifist. That would provide a very unique balance. Is it true? Almost certainly not. But technically, the movie did bring Sparky into the canon, so maybe. Maybe. More realistically, they could be possessing Fetch. They could be possessing. So there's a weird rat animatronic who moves.
Is there anything different back here now? Is this thing still here? It's not!
And moves from the future into the past. It's very weird. And it's clearly a rat in my opinion. You've got kind of circular ears, you've got a kind of snout. To me it's a rat. And the fact we see it in the future and it moves to the past is very telling. It feels possessed. What's interesting is that in the Foxy Help Wanted 2 minigame, would you guess it? But hey, there's a rat among the bandits, and I personally believe that Foxy originally started as some kind of maybe cartoon or comic who eventually got adapted into the Freddy's band. They bought the character. That's why he's themed as a pirate. That's why he has all these bandit characters. And so maybe this rat is one of them. Because one weird thing about this game, right, is Oswald is Foxy in the ending where he gets bit, right? And it seems to be Foxy. I guess maybe you could argue he's a different animatronic entirely, but it seems like he's Foxy based on the way it's presented. And does that mean that Foxy isn't possessed? Because then who is Fritz possessed? What's Fritz doing? Well, weird things can happen in Oswald's bedroom. For example, the FNAF 4 toys are there, which we know for a fact that the lava lamp was gotten at a yard sale, which by his dad, which kind of implies that his dad had bought Crying Child's toys, which is interesting in its own right. But we also know that he has a weird psychic connection to Freddy's. He's drawing the animatronics, right, before he ever even knows about them. And also, the Twisted Ones poster can appear in his room to replace Mecha's and Drelix. So, what kind of ghostly happenings are explaining that? Well, since we do see the rat animatronic in the future, and we see the Stitch Wraith, maybe they're possessed by, Fritz and the secret sixth kid, maybe, and they're messing with Oswald to try and get him to trust the brand more so that he dies, or, they've marked him as a target or something. I really don't know, but what I do know is that this is the MCI. I'm fairly confident that the dead bodies we see at the start are an illusion created by the ghosts, and that we are looking at the very original, very first Freddy's location. There's even just more evidence of that, and look at the Golden Freddy, right? It looks like Withered Golden Freddy in face shape and colour. It's closer to Withered Golden Freddy, but less worn with time. But also, it has 2 ears, and its hat is centered. So, to me, and again, it's said to be possessed in the Fetch minigame. We see the kind of possession eyes. So, and it does glow blue when you get into it, which again, Remnant. So, is this Golden Freddy a pre-withered Golden Freddy? It feels likely. So, and we also just know what pre-withered Foxy looked like because he was probably Captain Foxy before that. So that's why he may not even appear in this game. Even though we don't see Cupcake, we get to see him in Gabriella's family member's sketchbook. We get to see, Chico, Freddy, and Bonnie. So that's all pretty cool. And then we get to see that weird rat thing, which again, I'm very confused on the animatronic rat. But And now on to some miscellaneous Easter eggs that I didn't know I'd put anywhere else. The Freddy mask in the attic. It's a Freddy mask that goes over the face. There's really two times where that happens. In FNAF 2, you have to hold the Freddy mask to your face. That's implied by the fact that you can't do anything else. And in VR, in Help Wanted, it's basically just confirmed that you need to hold the FNAF 2 mask up to your face. The mask that we're seeing in this game is a strap-on mask, one that you would pull over and then just kind of holds itself to your face, which, in my opinion, is much more similar to the ones we're seeing out of the bullies, right? Foxy Bro, Bonnie Bro, Freddy Bro. So yeah, I just feel like Oswald's dad is Freddy Bro. The fact that his name is obscured on the name tag maybe means he's. I feel like he can't be Jeremy Fitzgerald because he can't have lost his frontal lobe, but maybe he was working there at some point, or like he must be someone that we'd recognize, is what I'm saying, because his name is obscured. But he does appear to be the Freddy bully. Um, Another miscellaneous Easter eggs, obviously the Golden Bite, 83 slices. I mean, in my opinion, that's just confirmation that Golden Freddy did the bite of 83, and that it is, in fact, the bite of 83. So, that's pretty nice. I mean, just confirming things we kind of already knew, but, like, clearly this is a Fazbear cover-up, but, like, it does seem to be confirming things. Um, there is the interesting little detail of Chica seemingly being the most loyal. She's the first animatronic active, and she's still active on night 5, even when the others aren't. So she seems to be particularly more loyal to Pit Trap than the others, which is also kind of represented in the books, where I believe she's more loyal to Afton, and like Susie is. So that's interesting. Maybe because she has her dog in the form of the cupcake, which again we've talked about. Um, Also, just the moment I saw Jeff in this game, like the moment I saw him, I knew, okay, people are gonna simp over him. Like, calling it now, and like I've already seen evidence of that in Raito's chat, so probably is what that is. He's definitely going to become a Tumblr sexy man, just like Francis Moses from That's Not My Neighbor. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. Okay, if you can't handle the truth, don't step into the debate ring. Yeah. But thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye bye.